Got a tweet from ENR. I have never seen any conviction of any senior politicians because the same politicians can buy judges. Corruption is everywhere from top to the bottom. The judicial service system should not be allowed to mix politics, period. Mark my words, there will be no conviction for the so-called big fish. That's as far as they're concerned, coming through on that. Let's see what Sir Mickey saying, a very good morning, doing a fine show indeed, and tuned in to this favorite segment of mine. Let's keep talking these big issues about integrity and our leadership and where we shall go next. Okay, thank you so much, Sir Mickey. Keep those tweets coming in at K24 TV. We're talking about the legacy the President Uhuru Kenyatta will leave, and of course, if he was to choose what he's going to do and just choose his entry for now, what would that be? Of course, you've said it's corruption and national cohesion, national unity,
yes.
Bring people together.
Yes, because we need to understand that if you were to go roads, Uhuru has built roads. If you were to go railway, he's built railway. If you were to take any other issue of infrastructure, power distribution, whatever, the president has delivered on those things. The reason why people are complaining most is because from Kibaki time till now, the war against corruption has not been won. And let's be clear, the praise that we give Kibaki is highly due to him. But let's also remember that Kibaki was coming off of a presidency that had literally delivered nothing. In the 90s, I dare anyone to tell me which major road had been built in this country. If you can remember how the highway between Nakuru and Nairobi was, in fact, the highway between Mombasa and Nairobi. So Kibaki came into a situation where he was comparing himself between black and white. Basically, he just needed to do one thing right. And let's not forget that there were issues also with the Kibaki presidency. It is not by accident that certain bypasses pass near certain big hotels in this country, because there was corruption even within Kibaki's government. Now, let's be honest. There is no other president in the history of this republic who's done more arrests, who's recovered more money, who's done more bilateral agreements, who's actually appointed people, who's actually allowed a minister of finance, CS finance in this country arrested. There's no other African country that has done that, so, and there are only about 3. So the truth of the matter is
what's the perception issue when we look at the fact that if he's done all this, but his people sit down and like, still you need to do more, President Kenya, still needs to do more.
No, of course he needs to do more. That's why he's got 3 more years to do it. But the reason why we can say, people keep saying that the president has done nothing, is because instead of focusing on development, we are campaigning.
Let's talk about
that. And the whole idea of campaigning is complaining.
Let's talk about that particular campaign, because that's what everyone is looking at right now, what's happening in Kibra. What would have been a by-election that people wouldn't pay much attention to, but now yes. The whole national attention is there. Yes. And also something that's come up from there, and let's talk about that before we get to Kibra, the BBI. Because yes. Some people are saying now the BBI might take a different tangent. It might not ask for a referendum as yes. well. Yes. And if it does go in that direction, how does it sail through?
I don't know whether it is my ancestors who normally guide me or what.
Had they told you that there wouldn't be a referendum?
No, BBI, I said from day 0 will never take off, because
okay.
It is premised on falsehoods. It is premised on...
the report hasn't been tabled yet. Anytime it comes up, that's what they say.
No, but there are already indications, and we know actually from... You see, there were terms of reference from the outset. Mm-hmm. From the terms of reference, it is possible to tell which areas we want to touch on and what are the likely outcomes. It doesn't take rocket science to be able to figure that out. But again, as I indicated, the problem is the BBI largely was premised on more on a political pedestal than a social pedestal that would rally and involve Kenyans. Up to this date, you have continued even to listen to people from the president's backyard telling him, we have no problem with this newfound love or this newfound friendship you have with your brother. We have no qualms at all. But the same way you came here telling us why it had to go the way it did in 2013, why can't you come back to us and also elucidate to us what this is really about, so that we can also rally the people? That has not happened. Mm-hmm. The same thing with, you've seen even concerns. You remember there's a particular fundraiser where Senator Orengo attended, when he really bashed an issue that had been proposed by the president. I can't remember the specific issue. Then the following day, the Senator Orengo changed tune because now he had to run around with what Raila is saying. What I'm pointing out is this has been a mystery between two people that the Kenyans do not understand. It is impossible to expect Kenyans to be a part of a process that they do not understand. So this idea of, and unfortunately, it has also come out from particularly principles within the BBI, especially former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, or that we need an executive prime minister, we need regional governments and all those things. So you start preparing Kenyans mentally that there is a likelihood there is going to be a referendum. And as I've maintained, believe you me, a referendum is the last thing that Kenyans want on their table. Kenyans are really struggling. The economy has really been harsh on them. So telling them that we are going to spend another 20-30 billion shillings on an exercise that just to increase 5 or 10 positions is not going to add value. So for you, and believe you me, believe you me, because it was premised on the wrong footing from the outset, it is never going to see the light of day. Okay. Kenyans have really woken up and have really begun to see things for what they are, not what politicians want us to believe. That's why even in reality on the ground, most of what used to be very prominent political voices are having a rough time.
Now, let's bring Nerima in on this, because before the question was the referendum is coming, it's not if but when. Now we are like, maybe not, as far as the BBI is concerned, as they say, and we shall defend them every single time they talk about the fact that we haven't tabled it yet. So all of this is speculation from people who haven't actually seen the document. But if it actually doesn't go the referendum route, how does it survive?
You know, I find it so interesting how we spend so much time talking about the BBI, and even when, so we engage youth a lot, so even though we ask them what they think the BBI is about, they have no clue. Right. And some of them, those who think that they know, they talk about the division of powers. So it seems like we all seem to know that it's about access to power for just a few people. So
they don't feel it's reflective of their issues?
No. They don't. But somehow it's being narrated that that's what's going to solve our national issues. But I'm very interested to see how it will be coined, how it will be drafted. Because when they came out and gave the famous handshake, it was such a surprise that there's such a momentum toward BBI that I'm curious to see how strategist is going to coin the narrative. And for me, even if it flops, it's probably going to flop. Right. TGRC did, and that was a more valuable report. So I'm just feeling like
no surprise
just
for
wait.
You on it.
Yeah, I'll just wait for it.
Okay, so Nerima saying BBI on its way to a flop. We've seen Puguza Mzigo being, every county, other than once in Gishu, every other county rejecting that particular one. So what way forward? Are we making all of this noise and then we go back to status quo?
The thing is, and I keep saying, let's not forget that in between the run-up to the second election in 2017, the presidential re-election, is everyone in this country was crying for one thing. And we were crying for a peace talk between Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta. And Uhuru Kenyatta made you guys a promise. And this is the funniest thing with Kenyans. And he told you guys, I'll talk to him after the elections. Did he or did he not say that? He did. And after the elections, he kept his word. Now, suddenly, we've forgotten that we were the people who are begging for this. We've also forgotten the sense of calm and reprieve that moved over this country. We've forgotten. We've forgotten that when the 9-point agenda of BBI, which we are now claiming to be secret, was released for all and sundry, signed by both of them. And if you look at those 9 points, we were all nodding our heads saying yes, yes, yes. Now, the argument we have against BBI is credit to brilliant strategy to the 2022 people. The people who are focused solely that Kenya is hinged on one election called 2022 have succeeded in muddying the waters on BBI. And why I'm saying they've succeeded in muddying the waters is because there's not a single shred of evidence that we have on what BBI is about in as far as access to a few to power. Because there was the war against corruption, there was national ethos, there was unity. There were so many other things that BBI needs to report on. And let me be the first to say, if the BBI report comes out and does not address national ethos, I'll be the first to criticize it. But also, if it comes out and does not address the fight against corruption, I'll be the first to criticize it.
I not jump in there also and ask, because these people who you're saying are hinged on the 2022 election,
Yes.
what does that have to do with this 9-point agenda and them not getting into the state house or wherever they want to be because of these 9 points?
Let me answer.
This should actually pave the way.
Let me answer why. Let me answer why. The day the handshake happened, the week the handshake happened, even before we had all these things come together, there were people who came out to criticize the handshake because for them, and let's be clear, there are people who've made their career off of insulting Raila Odinga. That is their entire political career. That's all they knew. And if you look at your TV stations today, news after this, news at 1, news at 7, you will find those people are not in the news. Why are they not in the news? Because their sole competence was fighting Raila Odinga. Now, if you have built yourself, your political career and your political campaigns for 2022 to be based on fighting Raila Odinga, and then suddenly your boss has a handshake with him, you don't have anything else to do. And that is why to this day you will find there are people who keep fighting Raila Odinga as though he's in office. And listen, I am no fan of Raila Odinga. I do not work for him. I do not know him. I've never associated myself with him. But the truth of the matter is this. The BBI is going through the mud because it is considered politically a threat for people who want to ascend to power in 2022. That's it. There is no merit in the context of
Okay,
BBI.
let me have Nerima coming in because she was shaking her head, couldn't believe what she was saying. He says it's 2022, and that's why.
Because, Jeff, I just wonder what Mark is saying. If it was really about the 9-point agenda, every time they had rallies, they would speak about the 9-point agenda. But a lot of times, what do they speak about?
What does Uhuru, let's talk about what Uhuru speaks about. In every speech of the president, and I've studied them, in every speech of the president, he'll talk about fighting corruption, which is in the 9-point agenda. He will talk about uniting this country, which is in the 9-point agenda. And those two issues are central to the national ethos, all of those things.
But
so
Mark,
on record, the president of this republic has stated those things in every single major speech he has given since that time. Every single one, you can check. Therefore, as a matter of public policy, as far as the presidency is concerned, he's entrenched those things.
It's not about what he says in the speeches.
Yes.
It's not. And that's not
But
what
even-
politics is.
Right.
It's what he says off the
When
speech.
he's in a
That's
rally,
what you focus
but
on.
even
And
off
you
his
should know
speech, what
that
does he
as an
talk about?
analyst.
Right.
No, I am.
It's not about the speeches.
But
That's somebody
what does
else
he
who
say
has
off the
drafted
cuff?
it for him.
When the president,
So what do you feel? What do you feel
when
off
the
the cuff?
president goes
Mark,
off the
Mark,
rails, what does he
the
talk
cuff,
about?
off the
What
cuff,
does he
he
talk
talks
about?
about power. In fact, it's even Raila who mainly speaks about the tier system, the regional
No, me,
system.
I'm talking about
That's
the
what he
president
talks
of the
about.
republic.
Right.
Me, I'm asking a question because you're saying
But Mark,
the
even as you
president
say
off
that,
the cuff.
because
Off
if
the
you
cuff,
say the
he's-
handshake,
he's-
the handshake was between
he's
Off
been
the
harsh
cuff,
on
he's
King
always
Juru off the
frustrated.
cuff.
Off the cuff,
He's
he's
been
always
harsh on his own
frustrated.
staff because of corruption. Off the cuff, he says, "Don't call me when you're being corrupt." Off the cuff, he said that my handshake was about uniting this country. Hasn't come on.
So you still feel that the
That's
people
because
who are
of one
on this
person.
particular issue are people who want to get into power 2022?
No, but that's the whole
They're the
issue.
ones who don't want the 9-point agenda
That's
and
the
might to go
issue.
through.
That's why it's free.
I don't know what Mark has been drinking through this weekend, but I have a very basic question to him. And also to the president. Why do we need a report to do the basic things that Mark is really so passionate about here? I mean, if it is about uniting country, the first responsibility or the first duty that is given by the Constitution to the president is supposed to be the head of the state and also the head of the lead in terms of unifying this country. So there is no need for getting so passionate about it's like really waking up, and Mark now is so excited because at least Ben Muller took breakfast, which is a standard expected practice that every morning when I wake up I took breakfast.
Right.
That is what is expected
But,
of the president.
Ben,
So my thing is, in my view, as I have insisted, this BBI for the last now almost 2 years has preoccupied Kenyans with so much about nothing. Too much ado about nothing. Because when you talk about national unity, forget about what the president says in his speeches. Let's critically look at what is in practice. Look at the constitution of his cabinet to begin with. Does it have a reflection of the face of Kenya? Look at all the appointments the president has done for the last 1.5 years to parastatals. Because actually he appoints all the chairmen of the parastatals in this country. Let's now look at that. Does that really bring in, just a moment, does that really reflect anything about national unity? Nothing. So this idea of speeches, we have seen very colorful speeches across the world. Obama was one of the finest orators. Uhuru is not even a fraction of that. But what we need is now tangible stuff that actually can integrate Kenyans. And one of the key things he needs to be able to focus on is the issue of unemployment. Last night I listened to former Governor Isaac Ruto. He was on your TV station on Punchline. And there's something he was very passionate about. One, the issue of devolved resources. Because when you talk about also unifying this country, I'm on record insisting that one of the key things that was to demolish or destroy the friction that was in between many areas of this country was devolution. Because like the conflict we are witnessing between Garissa County and Kitui County, if indeed there was sufficient allocation of resources so that those pastoralist communities would have sufficient support from the government in the times of drought, then there wouldn't be that kind of conflict. But here we are, the president himself is behind the frustration of devolution in this country. That's a reality. Just a moment. Just a moment. So those, you can't be giving us colorful speeches, yet in practice what we are seeing is a totally different thing. What we expect of the president is to lead from the front in agreeing that really, as head of state, he has to ensure that every corner of this country has sufficient resources allocated, and also spearhead the prudent utilization of the STEM, starting with his national government, so that Kenyans now can unify. Believe you me, if we was able to address the issue of unemployment in this country, our young people would not be easily manipulated by politicians to pick spears or to pick guns or to pick any other crude weapons to go fight their opponents. So let's forget about the fancy speeches. Let's focus on the real issues.
Okay, so I'll have Mark give a 30-second rebuttal on this, because as you've heard, yes, they're agreeing. We have heard him talk about fighting corruption and national unity, but as they say, kwa ground vitu ni different.
But you see, that's the key issue, because one of the things that you need to understand, he is mandated with the articles of the Constitution saying that he needs to be the unifying factor of this country. In that cognizance, it is why he did a handshake with Raila Odinga, because the biggest issue, if you talked about when issues come to a head in this country, from the last 15 years, it is always political. And it was stated clearly that we need to make sure that we have a country that is not in chaos every 5 years. How do you do that? You go across the aisle. That is exactly what consensus building is. And how do you build consensus? When the Israeli and Palestinians are having arguments, you don't have all the Israelis and Palestinians come to talk. You have the leader of the Palestinians and the leader of the Israelis coming to talk. So where do negotiations start? How do you build peace? You build peace by reaching across the divide. And that's what Uhuru did. So we cannot fault him for doing that. Again, he decided in his wisdom, which is a presidential prerogative, that he needs to create a process by which this is doable. And he is doing that. And so far, none of us can find something inherently wrong with BBI. What we keep finding is theories and imaginations of politicians.
So again,
so
are we
can
saying
we wait
for the report?
Can we
is
wait?
That where we are going
get
with
the
this?
report. And when the report is there, our job as analysts is to analyze the report. It is not to analyze the imaginations of errant politicians.
Okay, then we shall wait for that particular report, because as of now, we do know the 9 points, but we don't know what there is in that report. You'll wait and see how that. But something that actually came up from the Kibra campaigns that happened over the weekend was the BBI talk as well. Deputy President was there talking about it. But this whole Kibra campaign, some people looking at it, and now the cracks are beginning to show, not only within Jubilee, but within different parties. I mean, blow to Mudavadi as allies back ANC rival in Kibra clash. Kibra by-election battle took a new twist after an ANC lawmaker announced that at least 3 MPs under the Musalia Mudavadi-led party were supporting ODM candidate Imran Okoth. This Kibra by-election is indicative of coming 2022, there'll be different parties. What we think are the parties right now will no longer be what it is. So for people who voted for Ben Muller to get in and a certain party because he believed in that party and had a vision, what does that speak to even in terms of the electorate, what they should expect from their leaders?
Allow me to talk about Mudavadi. and I've been consistent, and I'm on record, that Mudavadi does not exist in the national political landscape in this country. He is a creation of individuals who are very uncomfortable with the shift in terms of politics going to 2022, and they've really been struggling to package him as a safe pair of hands and all these fancy things. We have seen many headlines. What is the reality on the ground is Mudavadi, even in the build-up to the Kibra by-election, made a massive miscalculation in terms of what is on the ground, because the problem is Mudavadi does not listen. Get close to the people around him. He does not listen. So when you talk about even his own MPs backing a different candidate, it is out of that kind of a frustration. So you can imagine that kind of an individual who does not listen to basic advice about a constituency if he ended up being a head of state. Now that said, I am on record again. Kibra is actually, all the major political parties actually miscalculated. Even you can see the struggle within the Jubilee Party because of the picking Mariga of a candidate who would have been an easy sell, or given the party an easy sale. Same challenge with the ODM. So in my view, up to this stage, the Kibra by-election still remains very open. And believe me, you may be very surprised that actually somebody who is not even featured as in part of these discussions as one of the leading candidates may pull a very interesting surprise. Because I have insights in terms of what is happening in Kibra. Forget about people who are being, campaigns that are being run from Langata constituency and others that are being run from particular boardrooms. There are very interesting insights into what is actually happening in Kibra, and you may be very surprised.
And I'll get to Nerima, then come to you, Mark, on this, because over the weekend as well, and this is a story that can be found on page 5 of the Standard, by the way, CAS Ministry Gender, Shebesh, saying that President Uhuru Kenyatta was arm-twisted into this particular deal in terms of fronting Mariga, and that's just saying as to how the Jubilee Party stands right now. Will this by-election be what will bring this party just to its knees completely? This one by-election bring the national party down?
I don't think so. I think it's already down. I don't think that the party has always existed as a unified force. And
when did it cease to exist, when you think about it?
Handshake.
Is it really handshake? Maybe.
Even before the handshake?
I mean, it's so long ago. It feels like it's always been like that. But I do think that by-elections are very interesting. Just because the turnout is not the same, it's lower. And we were wondering whether is it going to be a sympathy vote, are people actually going to vote the right way? And even when we looked at the Ugenya by-election, and ODM went very strongly against David Ochieng, but he still managed. So now we are going to observe. Kibra is now in the highlights. So who are they going to elect? Is it just going to be the banter? So sometimes even the numbers or the sheer force that's used to push an agenda might not work in a by-election. So we just wait and see. So I don't think that Jubilee is anywhere that can get to being united. Okay, like
Kibra,
it's already broken.
Kibra just showing the lines of fault within Jubilee, within ODM, with the tampering of the voters register that was spoken about, ANC already having members of the party backing a different candidate. What is going on within these political circles?
First, in this country, there are only two institutions that we can call political parties by strength of time. That is KANU and ODM. Everything else is a Johnny come lately, and if it's all a Johnny come lately, has been reduced to one office in Marikiti like DP. So the truth of the matter is this: Kibra is an ego battle. It's a Musalia Mudavadi ego, a William Ruto ego, a Raila Odinga ego. It is an ego battle. Now, what is the ego battle? Raila Odinga is seen to be sitting at the top of the hill. Everyone else is seeking to destroy that kingship in that hill. That's all it's about. The Marigas, the Imrans, the whoever's are simply going to be benefactors of that fight. And that's really what Kenyans need to understand. This Kibra election has two tiers. One side is saying, is Ruto electable? Is Mudavadi electable? Is Raila Odinga electable? On the other side, for the people of Kibra, is which MP are they going to get? Now, unfortunately for them, this national politics is overcoming the agenda, because let's not forget, the person who, if Jubilee happens to trounce Raila in Kibra, then it will be said that Raila is losing his foothold. Is that good for the country? Is that bad for the country? We don't know. Two, if Raila is able to hold on to Kibra, then does it say that he is still the man to beat in 2022? That's really the question. It's not about the quality of the candidate. The question is, who's going to win that battle for the hill?
Okay, and you'll wait and see how it shapes up, because the Kibra campaign's hotting up as the day, as we see it every single time as it transpires right there. We take a short break, of course. Mark will be leaving, but we'll be back with plenty more. Talking about Harambe's required to get a license to get your Harambe done, and also SportPesa and betting closing shop as far as Kenya is concerned. What does that portend for that industry, but also employment as a whole and the business environment? We have that discussion as we get into the top of the hour. This is K24 This Morning. Keep those tweets coming in at K24 TV. You'll also call us after the break. The numbers scrolling at the bottom of your screen. This is K24. Good morning.